Ainu, the indigenous people of Japan, for a very long time believed to be the original Japanese people, with a distinct culture, appearance and beliefs that slowly got pushed to the margins of the archipelago by the expanding Yamato Japanese population, and also an inspiration for this cutie. Since second season of Fumetsu no Anata came and went, let's go back to the first season, one of the most heartbreaking arcs from it. And specifically let's talk about the people of Ninannah, who at first glance might seem like the author's original creation, but were actually based on the ethnic minority of Japan still living to this day on the islands. So let's take a closer look at the real life story behind that arc. For a very long time it was believed that Ainu people were the actual original Japanese people, that they inhabited most of the Japanese archipelago, and that they were direct descendants from the Japanese people inhabiting the islands around 16,000 years ago, until the Japanese we know now came from the mainland Asia and pushed them further and further up north until they could only be found on Hokkaido. This theory, however, was never actually proven, and now it is mostly believed that Ainu actually lived next to the first civilization of what we would consider Japanese people now, or Yamato people, as that's how they are sometimes called to distinguish them from other ethnic minorities, now minorities, living on the islands at the time. Yamato inhabited mainly southern parts of Honshu in the beginning, whereas Ainu were mostly bound to the northern parts of the island and Hokkaido. Unfortunately, as Yamato grew in power, Ainu were pushed further and further away until they could only be found on that one island. So we see that this part of the previous theory is still believed to be true, and Hokkaido actually wasn't always a Japanese territory. Previously this island was actually called Ezo, and it didn't become a part of Japan until 1802, when the colonization and assimilation of natives started. Due to it, traditional villages started being replaced by cities and eventually almost entirely disappeared. Not entirely sure how many of these villages still are in Hokkaido. There is one called Akan Ainu Kotan, and it seems to be the most popular destination right now for anyone interested in the culture, but unfortunately this place is now mostly a tourist attraction and not a 100% authentic place. In the storyline of the series it is said that Yanome people, aka Yamato people of the real world, actually need the territory of Ninannah in order to be able to support themselves. And so, to do that, they basically manipulated Ninannah into giving them access to that territory by using their own beliefs against them. They made them believe that Oniguma, the bear spirit that they believed in, would cause them misfortune if they didn't sacrifice one young girl each year. And this sacrifice was done with the help from Yanome. Yanome carried out this horrible ritual for Ninannah each year so that people of Ninannah would actually treat them almost like saviors. With this practice, Yanome people were able to control less developed and more gullible people of Ninannah for years and leech off of them. They were getting access to their land with the other nations' blessing, basically, for what they believed that Yanome people were doing for them, since they believed that they were doing them such a big favor. It wasn't said in the anime that they took the land as it happened in the real-life story of Ainu people, but it was said that Yanome needed the lush lands of Ninannah and that manipulation was their means of getting it. Of course, in real life such manipulation wasn't involved. The Japanese government didn't even need it. They just took over their land and chose forceful assimilation by taking away the Ainu's rights to practice their own culture, to use their own language or practice religion. They forced Ainu out of the lifestyle that they knew for ages of hunters and gatherers and made them do manual labor jobs and treated them as second-class citizens for years. But now about Ainu themselves. They are the indigenous people of northern Japan, but they could also be found on neighboring regions of Russia, including Sakhalin, Kamchatka and Kuril Islands. Ainu are ethnically different to Japanese, or what we consider now Japanese people. They can carry a lot of features similar to Caucasians actually, so some of them could have more curly than straight hair, and a lot of facial hair is not that uncommon among them, whereas it is rather unusual for Japanese. Their language, culture and religion were also vastly different as they grew and developed separately in a completely different region. Japanese and Ainu are two completely separate ethnic groups, however, due to the assimilation with the Japanese, today's Ainu don't really practice their own culture anymore and they're mostly forgotten their language. A lot of them just moved to the big cities and mostly they live ordinary modern lifestyles and you wouldn't be able to distinguish them from the Yamato Japanese anymore. So unfortunately we can see that throughout the years of being pushed to the margins of not only archipelago but also society, most of Ainu now have sadly lost their roots. There are still some Ainu villages though, and a few people from older generations still practice the way of their ancestors. And also some younger people try to incorporate their old traditions into the new media and pop culture. Like for example a musician called Oki, who is a descendant of Ainu and uses some traditional Ainu instruments in his otherwise modern music. Apart from that, unfortunately now most of the Ainu traditions are kept alive just as tourist attractions. And one of the most important elements of Ainu tradition is their religion. which is in some places very similar to Shintoism in a sense that both of those religions are animistic. It means that they believe that anything that surrounds them, being it an object, a creature, or a place, can actually host a spirit of a god. In Ainu's religion, those spirits are called kamui, and they mostly associate them with aspects of nature since they believe that anything in nature can be a god. And one of the most important spirits for them is a god called Kim-un Kamui, who is a god of mountains and bears. If you've seen the anime, you know that the bear is a big element of the story in the Ninannah arc. The people of Ninannah are being manipulated by Yanome, who use their beliefs in the bear god, who is said to require an offering in the form of a young girl's life each year. Yanome saw an opportunity in this, and while offering to assist in the ritual by taking the girls from one of the villages year after year to sacrifice them to the bear, they really just left them tied up in one place and didn't really think that the bear was real. It was just a scheme to make the people of Ninannah believe that the spirit actually exists, and this offering is the only thing that is keeping them relatively safe from the rage of this god. This way, Yanome had a huge influence on the gullible, less developed Ninannah and was able to profit from it. Though in the storyline it turned out that there was actually a huge bear there. Now going back to the real world, a sacrifice or an offering is also a big element of Ainu religion, and is also connected to the bear god too, just like in the anime. However, it is actually the exact opposite of what was shown in the show. Ainu of course never killed their kids. It was actually the bear cubs that were being sacrificed in the religious rituals. These ceremonies were called iyomante, and the whole process would start with capturing a small bear cub and bringing it to the Ainu village to raise it for a few years, as if it was their own kid. These bears were treated with utmost care and love. I mean, they were thought to be the gods after all. They would get the best food, sometimes even breast milk from Ainu moms, and would live indoors with the rest of the people. When the cub reached the age of around 2, the village would hold the iyomante ceremony. There were a lot of different rituals happening during that day, but the most important one of them would be the ritual sacrifice of the bear cub. They would tie it up to a pole, and the men of the village would shoot arrows at it, killing it eventually. So even if the show didn't take it literally, there is still a connection here. It was a bear cub being sacrificed in real life, but they treated it as their own child, so... This ritual was practiced by Ainu because they believed that the mountain/bear god is actually captured inside the physical form of the bear and is not able to come back to their home, to the spirit's world. So by pampering it for a few years and then killing it, the god would be able to escape from the mortal world and go back to their real godlike form and go back to the spirit's world. So by doing that, the villagers believed that they would be granted a great favor from their gods in return, which is exactly the opposite of what was happening in the show, because the Ninannah girls were not sacrificed to get favor from the god or protection from the god. They were sacrificed for their society to escape the rage of that god. Now moving to a bit less morbid subject, the clothes and the houses in the show were all taken from Ainu culture as well. For the houses at first I thought they looked like early Japanese pillar dwellings or storehouses. A very similar style is still kept to this day in some Shinto shrines, most notably in Ise-jingu. And it was because of those pillars that I got confused, because they don't typically exist in Ainu housing, but the rest, the thatch roofs, the walls, are pretty accurate. And so are the clothes. Ainu used a lot of geometrical patterns, but they didn't cover their entire garments in them, like it is done with kimonos a lot of the time. Ainu would put them mainly around the sleeves, collar and bottom of the garment. In the show they're not as heavy as in reality, but we can still definitely see some similar patterns on the clothes of the villagers. Also the headbands, similar to the one Machi wears, were used by Ainus as well. Another very important element of Ainu culture that is also present in the show is facial tattooing. It is specifically a women's tradition, and in Ainu tribes, girls would start tattooing the area around their mouths from a very young age. It was a very gradual process. They would be adding ink little by little as the girl grew, and most of the time, once they reached adulthood, their tattoos would look similar to a big mustache on top of their mouth. Sometimes they would also tattoo their forearms, but it's important to remember that the art of tattooing was mainly reserved for women. They would start with a small dot around the little girl's mouth, as little as 6 or 7 years old sometimes. And such tattoo would expand and grow with the girl throughout her lifetime, in some cases until the day of her wedding, but a lot of women actually chose to practice this tradition through their entire lives. And it is believed that this tradition was actually a religious practice that was meant to chase away any sickness. In the anime we can see something similar too. Though the ink on Machi's face is not a tattoo, she can wash it off and it is not placed the same as it would be on an Ainu girl. It also seems like in the anime only young girls wear it, as no other woman of age in the village is wearing any ink. And when Machi is shown as a grown-up, she is also not wearing hairs anymore. So again, this part of the Ainu tradition is used in the anime in almost exactly the opposite way. In the anime, instead of the tattoo growing up with the girl showing her maturity, it was representing childhood and chastity, and so also someone fit to be a sacrifice to the bear god. If I've missed something, let me know in the comments. Or not. Who am I to tell you what to do?